to be here. Hey, folks. Glad that you're all here, and I'm happy to be here as well. I'm going to share the story with you today, which is the story in the book Forever Employable, which is not necessarily kind of agile themed per se, but it does draw on a lot of agile qualities and agility in general, as well as sort of risk mitigation and kind of maximizing chances for success. So that's going to be the focus of today. It's going to be focused on sort of professional development and career growth. I'll leave some time at the end for some questions. And as Jamie mentioned, we are going to wrap up just a few minutes ahead of the top of the hour so that, well, I've got one more thing to get to this evening before it's over. So I'm going to share my screen and we can get started with this. The interesting thing about this story is, and so the Forever Employable came about as a reaction to or response to a lot of inbound requests from folks who have worked with me, who are familiar with my work, and I've said, "Hey Jeff, how did you get a book deal? How did you get that speaking gig? How did you build your business?" And so I decided initially that I was going to write just a kind of a lengthy post about it, and that turned into the book Forever Employable. So I'm going to share the story with you, and the story begins on January 31st, 2008. January 31st, 2008 was my 35th birthday. And I woke up on my 35th birthday in a bit of a cold sweat. I woke up in a bit of a panic, and I was trying to figure out why I woke up in a bit of a panic, because really, I mean, when I was 35 and frankly, things, stayed that way. But when I was 35, things were good. This is me when I was 35. Those are my daughters. When I was 35, the one in the middle there goes to college, university now, and her little sister's in high school. So it's been a little while. And, I think things were pretty good when I was 35. And I wasn't sure exactly why I was waking up in the cold sweat. I'd had a pretty good run up until that point in my life. I actually started off playing music for a living. I played music in a bunch of bands over the years and toured up and down the East Coast of the United States. And when I got tired of being broke, because musicians don't make any money, the internet happened. How cool was that the internet happened? And the internet gave me an opportunity to actually make a living. And so back in 1999, when I decided to sort of abandon my rock and roll dreams, I got my first job on the web as a web designer at a company called IXL. And in 1999, if you could spell HTML, you could get a job on the web. And I could do a little bit more than spell HTML. I could actually do a little bit of design work, and I could write HTML. And so I got my first job doing web design. And shortly thereafter, someone introduced me to this book, Information Architecture for the World Wide Web. And I decided that that's what I actually wanted to do. I wanted to become an information architect. And I transitioned from web design to information architecture to UX and UI design, and kind of moving. I finally had sort of career direction. I was making a little bit of money, no longer a broke musician. And crap, the .com bubble burst. All that good momentum just sort of went away very, very, very quickly. And so I bounced around for a few years, as sort of the internet settled a bit. I worked at America Online, making the software that went on these CDs. If you lived in the US, France, Germany, or the UK in the 90s, in the early 2000s, you probably received some software that I worked on these CDs. And you're very welcome for that. I hope that was helpful for you. I led the design team at Web Trends, and then about 10 years into my career, I landed back in New York City.
How's it going? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I landed back in New York City as the director of user experience for the Ladders, and I was leading a design team in an agile environment. and trying to figure out not only how to build a design team, but to build a successful design team in an organization that was transitioning into Agile. And so I find myself here roughly in my 35th birthday, waking up as the director of user experience at the Ladders. I kind of spent a decade clawing my way up to middle management. And I wake up in this cold sweat and trying to really figure out why. Why was I sort of having this panic attack on the morning of my 35th birthday? And it dawned on me a little bit back then is that I was 35 and that I'd be 40 in 5 years. Now, from that side of 40 is a little scary. From this side of 40 is awesome. I'd love to be 40 again. That would be amazing. But from that side of 40, it felt like I had 5 years until I was going to potentially start facing some real challenges getting my next job. I was seeing my colleagues who were older than me struggling to get their next job because as you know, by design, the further up in an organization you go, the fewer leadership roles there are. And that was the career path I was on. And this was particularly true for design jobs. There were very, very few design leadership jobs. In addition to that, I was hiring younger designers to come in, and these folks that I was hiring, they were better than me, they were faster than me, they were cheaper than me, and they were hungrier than me, and they were willing to I had family at that point. They were willing to work hours that I wasn't willing to work, and I was really concerned that if I had to start looking for my next job, I would really struggle to find the next job, and that would become increasingly more difficult over time. Hence the panic on the morning of my 35th birthday. So on that same morning, I resolved that I was no longer going to look for jobs. It's going to stop. Because to me, in my mind, that was going to be an increasingly losing proposition, right? I was going to lose those opportunities. Whereas up until that point, I was fairly successful at landing the jobs that I wanted to land, I felt like that was going to start coming to an end very quickly. So I was going to stop looking for jobs, and I was going to create a situation where jobs were going to look for me. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, wow, Jeff, that's absolutely mind-blowing, right? But it starts to bring up some pretty important questions. You can say those words, I'm going to stop looking for jobs. Jobs will find me. But it does start to bring up some fairly important questions if you're going to create a situation where jobs are going to find you. So the first question is this: if people are going to look for me, does anyone know who I am? Which I think is a fair question if you're going to create that. And arguably in 2008, I had a CV, a resume, I had a LinkedIn profile, but beyond that, not much else out there. If they're going to look for me, why? Why would they look for me, right? What is it that I am uniquely suited to help them with? How would they find me, right? So where do I want them looking for me, and what channels can I use to get them to me, get those opportunities to me? And then finally, what kind of work do I want? Because if jobs are going to find me, I want actual jobs that are interesting to me to find me. And so these are the questions that I set out to answer later that week after the birthday celebrations had died down. And where I sort of landed after thinking about this for a while is I realized that I decided that the way that I was going to create the situation where jobs were going to find me and to start answering those questions was I was going to create a platform for myself. I was going to create kind of a personal brand or a platform for myself, and then use that as a magnet to continuously attract opportunities towards me. And the only way that I knew how to do that at the time was to take my experience and my expertise and to turn it into content of all kinds, and then to build an audience around that content. And that would create the platform. And that way people would know me, they would know what value I offer, what services and skill sets I had, and they would hopefully come to me when they needed that kind of work. So I would attract the kind of work that I wanted. That was the situation. And I've spent, it says, the next 10 plus years in this presentation. At this point, we are borderline 15 years of doing this work and building this, right? So 10 plus is a kind way to make myself feel better about the fact that I'm turning 50 next year. But I've spent I've spent the time since my 35th birthday building that platform, and it continuously evolving it and learning and improving it. And what I've learned over time and since then is that there are at least 5 qualities that I've discovered in myself that I found valuable, that helped me become forever employable. And that the process that I took and continue to take these days also has 5 steps in it that helped me get there. And if you add those things up, and we'll go through each one of those things individually in just a second, but if you add those things up, really the bottom line is that as we think about we go to work every day and we build digital products and services, we have to treat our career and our professional development in the same way. It's a product. It's a product that needs to be validated in the marketplace, iterated, continuously improved to meet ever-changing needs. And really that's the key, is to make sure that we're always thinking about that as we want to guarantee a safety net of opportunities, particularly in a world with a lot of fluctuations, with a lot of uncertainty, unpredictability these days, right? How do we ensure that we've always got these opportunities coming in so that we can stay forever employable, right? There's always something, the next thing's always coming up. So the 5 qualities that I discovered in myself that I needed to help build this were these 5 qualities: the entrepreneurialism, self-confidence, continuous learning, continuous improvement, and reinvention. And for this community, you should find these terms familiar, right? This is about agile, or more so about being agile, right? Or agility. But instead of focusing these qualities on products, you're focusing them on you, your career, your professional development, and growth. Now, as I was looking for these qualities in myself, I was wondering if I had them, right? Because in many cases, I really didn't feel, for example, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, right? But then when you kind of dig into your past and you try to figure out, well, have I been an entrepreneur in my past? And the answer was sure. I've actually been an entrepreneur. And I found examples in my life where I had built, entities, organizations. A business would be an exaggeration because none of these bands were ever particularly profitable. But as a member of a touring band and a manager of these touring bands, right, we were a startup and we built these entities that were designed to create value and generate value and hopefully become self-sustaining. And so I'd been entrepreneurial when I was a touring musician, especially since I ran these particular bands. You're always searching for product market fit in a long-term sustainable way, right? We had been out there and had done this. So I did have this entrepreneurial experience to help think about how to build my platform and to build that expertise and that experience and turn it into content. To put yourself out there and to share your content, you need self-confidence. Your experience has value, your knowledge has value, but you have to be confident enough to share it. I was looking for opportunities or experiences in my life that helped me build that self-confidence. And one of those opportunities was back in the summer of 1995. I joined the circus. That was my first job, in fact, after college. This is one of the photos I took when I was there. I lived in that semi-tractor trailer on the left there that has the word circus on it with 7 other guys. This was a weird experience, and I was a fish out of water there for a very long time. And over the course of 6 months of being on the road with the circus, I learned not only how to survive, but how to thrive in a relatively foreign and strange environment. And that really taught me a lot that said, look, I can kind of figure things out on my own in most circumstances. If I could figure this out, believe me, you could figure out most things in life. And so I had that experience doing self-confidence. When it came to continuous learning, this was something that I was doing in my career already. So this was an easy thing to kind of say, look, I'm good at this and I know how to do this. Reading books, reading articles, engaging in community, speaking with others. This is the way that I became better at my job. It's the way that I stayed relevant. And if you're not doing this, then really this is where kind of your career becomes stagnant. So joining meetups like this, for example, is an excellent way to really help drive that. And you turn that learning into continuous improvement. There's a, an opportunity to learn not only from the materials that you read in these engagements, but to look for opportunities to get better at what you're doing. The photo that's in front of you today, I'll just give you an example of that, is this is the last time I taught a class in front of people, like actually in a room with them. I know some folks are doing that again now. I haven't done it yet since this is March 13th, 2020. It's in Paris. And I happen to be teaching this class with Jeff Patton. Jeff Patton and I teach together, or at least we used to in the physical world. And one of the reasons I teach with Jeff and with other practitioners is because I learn from them. I learn how to be a better practitioner, how to be a better teacher, a better facilitator. We come at the same material from different perspectives, and that helps me become better and improve. And it's that humility that has made me better, and I can share those experiences as part of my content as well. And then lastly, the last quality was reinvention. And the really interesting thing here is this learning that I've picked up over the years is what got you here won't get you there. And certainly not the technical skills, right? There's just too much change. Everything's moving too quickly. And so we have to pay attention to what the market is asking for, and then try to figure out how the things that we do fit into today's reality, tomorrow's reality, and a month from now, 6 months, and a year, and so forth, right? I've been talking about design thinking and product thinking and, lean UX and lean startup for a very long time. I've been talking about it to product development teams for a very long time. But there is a really interesting opportunity to bring that conversation to non-product teams, legal, finance, marketing, and HR. And I decided that there was a real opportunity there and started to sort of reinvent some of my expertise and my content to target those folks and to start to have those conversations. An example of that is the clipping on the screen. This is an HBR article that I wrote, which was about bringing product thinking to non-product teams. It's the same content. It's the same experience and expertise that I talk about with designers and product managers and engineers and Scrum masters and so forth, and Agile coaches, but it's applied to finance and legal, marketing, and HR, and that helps broaden the audience. It helps to broaden the folks who might be interested in hiring me and sending opportunities my way, and hopefully maintaining my forever employability, if you will. So those were the 5 qualities that I talked about. Now, to get there, at least I do believe I've achieved some level of, I don't like to speak in absolutes, so it's hard to say forever employability, but I do believe I've achieved the situation where the opportunities kind of come in on their own. But to get there, I took these 5 steps. And this worked for me. And I'm not saying this will work 100% for you, but if you can pick and choose some things that make sense for you, I think that's a great place to start. And so let's go through each one of these let's kind of see how it goes. So step 1 is plant a flag. Now, planting a flag means deciding what your platform is going to be based on, right? What are you going to be known for? What is the foundation for it? And it's a risk, right? Because you're going to be attached to this thing for a while. So let's make sure that it makes sense, that it's big enough, et cetera. And the people who've done this well, you associate their platform immediately with them, right? So we'll take, Eric Ries, right? Planted his flag on the lean startup, right? My friend Jake Knapp planted his flag on design sprints, right? He's the design sprint guy. Alex Osterwalder over in Switzerland is the business model canvas, the business model generation. That's his platform. Seth Godin is the marketing guy, right? The people who have done this well, they know where to plant their flag. And for me, the flag that I planted is with Lean UX. Now, Lean UX was the work that I was doing at the time. It was trying to solve the challenge of doing great design work with great agile software development work. And that's the work that I was working on. And so I wrote about it and I shared my experiences, and that ultimately turned into a book, Lean UX. And that's where I planted my flag. Now, if you Google Lean UX, for better or for worse, I'm the Lean UX guy. And I've managed to build my platform on top of that. And so as you start to think about sort of this first step in the process, if you want to create this platform for yourself, is to really think through, well, what's my expertise, what's my experience, what am I passionate about, and where is something I'm willing to dedicate myself to for a while, right? Because it takes a while for you to establish your credibility, and then you become known for that thing. So that's what I decided to do, because that's what I knew at the time. And once I decided where to plant my flag, the conversation then shifted to telling my story. And that's the, that to me, that's the beginning of this, right? I wanted to become a storyteller about lean UX. How did we solve UX and Agile? How did we do it? What did we do? What was easy? What was hard? And I wanted to tell my story to anyone, anywhere, all the time. And a lot of folks get stuck here, right? Because the obstacle that most folks run into is, well, what unique story do I have? We get into our own heads and we let doubt take over, right? I have good experience. Everyone has good experience. She has more to offer than I do. My story isn't extraordinary enough to be unique. And what's interesting about that is that the best part of your experience or of your story about the work that you're doing is not whether or not you've solved a particular difficult problem, or you've climbed, climbed Everest, or ran an ultra marathon, or, built and sold a unicorn. It's the best part of your experience is that nobody else has it, right? Only you can tell that story, right? Nobody else can tell your story because you're the only one who's gone through that. So you've got that unique lens and that unique perspective to do that. And that's extremely valuable because no one's heard that yet if you haven't told that story. So really, it's a nice way to kind of move on from that. I started telling my story on August 12th, 2010. It's the first time I spoke at the Agile conference. And this is the first time I talked about how we did UX and Agile at the Ladders. Now, the date's important because it's 2.5 years now since my 35th birthday. It's the first time I've given a public talk about this. It took me a while to get there. It took me a while to work up to this. And so this was an important thing. And then about a month later was the first time I stood up on stage and talked about lean UX. That was in Paris at a conference called the European Information Architecture Conference. And I submitted to that conference and they accepted me and then let me give a talk. And so the big break really came 3 years after my 35th birthday, right? I'm working full time. I'm still doing the work, but there was an online publication called Smashing Magazine that let me tell my story to their readership. And that was 1 million people at the time. Smashing has a lot more readers these days, but even back then in 2011, they had 1 million readers. And this took the conversation global. And then all of a sudden, opportunities start to come in. The platform starts to establish itself. And now people are saying, hey, Jeff, come and give us a talk here, come and give us a talk there. Tell us about this lean UX thing. And so the content flywheel begins to move forward. And I start to tell the story in experimenting through a variety of channels, Twitter and Medium and LinkedIn and Quora at the time, Facebook, MailChimp, et cetera, all of these types of opportunities to tell the story, to figure out ways to create content that people will consume, in this case, about lean UX. In fact, we went so far as to actually create Lean UX, the musical, which was amazing. I don't know if you caught it in your hometown. That's not true. There was no Lean UX, the musical. But let's talk about why that story resonated, right? So as I began to tell that story, why did it resonate? And this is kind of a thing that applies to every story that you tell, right? I was solving a real world problem that many people had. So if you're going to tell a story, try to tell a story that helps a lot of people deal with something that a lot of folks are dealing with. I had actual real world experience. I had done the work, right? This wasn't, and this is, this wasn't speculation. This wasn't hypothetical. I was sharing case studies, war stories, stories from the trenches of doing this, failing, learning, trying again. And I was doing so humbly. I was sharing the wins, certainly, hey, this worked, but I was also sharing the losses. This didn't work. And here's what we learned from that. And it was that humility that really started to drive a lot of connection with folks, right? And every conversation, every story, every talk, every article provided practical, tactical advice, which helps to connect you authentically with an audience, right? And that is extremely valuable in telling your story. So I planted my flag and I started telling my story, and all of a sudden, these new opportunities began to come my way. Initially, they were small, these new paths, right? Come give a talk, come teach a class, come speak at my company, come speak at this meetup. Maybe you can write a guest article. What was interesting was it was pulling me away from my day-to-day job, which is a really interesting challenge, right? I was doing less and less design work and more of this kind of stuff, just sort of flying around the world and giving talks and teaching classes. And that began to worry me because I was concerned I was going to stop. Remember, younger, hungrier, cheaper, faster designers coming in, they can do a better job than me. And if my skills are going to atrophy even more quickly, that was concerning for me, right? But what's interesting is that the more that you amplify the story, the more interesting opportunities show up. And you really have to kind of find yourself ready to do that. So as I was giving talks at these conferences, it turns out that publishers go to conferences to find the latest speakers on the latest topics. And they try to give you an opportunity to maybe write a book about it. And so I got an opportunity to write the Lean UX book at a conference, speaking to a couple of different publishers. I ended up signing a book deal with O'Reilly because they wanted to publish the Lean UX book. And I took the opportunity, right? I took the opportunity despite this crazy secret, which is I didn't know how to write a book. Like the longest thing I'd ever written up until that point had been about 750 words, and they wanted 50,000 words, right? But the thing here, right, is if you're going to go down this particular path, these opportunities are going to show up. And so you need to be prepared for those opportunities. People say, Jeff, you were so lucky to get that book deal. And I agree, right? But I was prepared to take advantage of that opportunity when it showed up, right? And I think that that's the key to doing that. Now, look, it wasn't easy. It was hard. In fact, it took me 2 years, 3 editors, and I wrote the manuscript 4 times to finish Lean UX. It was brutal. I didn't think it was actually going to survive, right? But March 11th, 2013, 5 years after my 35th birthday, I am now 40, right? I've crested the hill. The book came out, and the book turned out to be a very big success, continues to be. Today, it's in its 3rd edition. We wrote the 3rd edition last year, and continues to sell and do well, and has continued to generate more and more opportunities for me. The primary opportunity that it's generated for me over the years is teaching, which is step 4. All these new paths have provided me teaching opportunities in a variety of different settings, workshops and conferences, webinars and podcasts, etc. And to me, that's become the bulk of my work these days. And I said initially, I didn't know how to do this stuff initially, but I said yes to everything, right? I was prepared to seize these opportunities because when I teach, I get feedback on the material. I get better at storytelling. I understand where I have gaps in my thinking and in my content. And then I can go get that experience and come back and share it again through my consulting work. And this has become a fantastic loop that continues to generate more and more opportunities for me as a solo practitioner. Now, look, if you work in-house, right, you can still do this. You can still teach when you work in-house, right? There are all kinds of opportunities for you to start to build these muscles, even if you don't want to become self-employed or a consultant on your own. But you've got lots of choices for that to happen and to move forward. Now, the 5th and final step, and the one that was hardest for me to learn, because was to give it all away. This is really interesting because I worked hard, I have experience, I have expertise, and I wanted to get paid for that expertise. And what I've learned over time is that the more you give away, the more you get back from the community, the more you can share back and give back to your discipline for free, the more that comes back. And the way that you do that is by making your work and yourself easily findable and accessible. I post everything, articles, webinars, podcasts, blog posts on easily findable sites. Initially, these were things like Medium and Facebook and LinkedIn. And today it's a lot more about my personal website simply because people know to look for it there. But initially, right, using the social media sites to distribute your content is a great path, and encouraging people to reach out to you. I do my best to build a community locally and to give back. Back when I used to travel for work, if I had a paid gig during the day, I always tried to do some kind of a free community event in the evening, meetups and local conferences, and friends and organizations would ask me to speak, and I would do it for free because, again, you're building that goodwill, you're building that community, you're getting your name out there, and when people need help from you, they inevitably come back to you. So as I wrap this up, I want to leave you about 10 minutes or so for questions. A few things to remember, right? If you're going to go down this particular path, you have to stay relevant. To stay relevant, it means you have to stay active in conversations, in the community. You have to have a presence. You have to do the work and share the work, contribute, really be a part of whatever community it is where you've decided to plant your flag. Give yourself time for this. This is something that, look, some people are better at this. There's a lot of folks who are better at this than me. They do this faster. It took me a long time to build my platform. I've learned that for me to sort of build credibility in any new idea or new discipline, it takes a couple of years of you kind of consistently hammering home specific messages. Maybe you could do it faster, but I would give yourself that kind of time. And then the last couple of things to think about is that, as I said before, this is what worked for me. On my time frame, my timeline, right? There are many other options. You can go down the academia path, executive education, et cetera. There's lots of ways to do this. This is what worked for me, right? But the interesting thing to think about, and I like this quote from Bezos, right? Bezos always gets asked, like, what's going to happen and what's going to change in 5 years? And he says, look, I don't think about that. I think about what's not going to change in the next 10 to 20 years. And I provide services that solve those problems. Now, the way that I solve those problems is going to evolve over 10 to 20 years, but the need is always going to be there. And I would challenge you to think about the needs that you meet in the marketplace, right? Remember about your career as a product. And what are the needs that are always going to be there that you'll be able to provide service for, right? To help people solve those problems, even if the methods that you solve, the way that you solve those problems will change over time. And that can really help you start to build that foundation for becoming forever employable. And so with that, I want to say thanks for listening and thanks for having me. I'd love to take your questions for the next 10 minutes or so. If you have any questions at all after the fact, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you feel compelled enough to pick up a copy of Forever Employable on Amazon, I'd be super grateful for your review afterwards. So thanks so much. And I'm curious what kind of questions you have for me.
So, Jeff, first, thanks for this excellent presentation. And also just wanted to say that you're not alone with the cold sweat. I think every person has that at some point in their life for different reasons. And then finally, I don't really have a question. I just found your story so inspiring that you shared with us. You went from graduating in college, living in a van with 7 other guys in a circus, and today you're a recognized authority. And I can't tell you how amazed that is. That's a wonderful story. And now I'll shut up and let somebody ask a real question.
Thanks for saying that, Roger. Yeah, it's interesting to look back on it, right? To say, like, I mean, really, it's the path is a little squirrely from circus to author, but here we are. What else? What other questions do you have about any of this stuff? Easy, hard, that type of thing. Steve?
Hey, hello. Yeah, I just want to say thank you as well for this awesome presentation. You streamlined everything.
Oh, my pleasure.
No, I lost them.
Excellent. So sorry. Was there a question? I missed it. If there was a question, I apologize.
Yeah. So I was just making down note for the 5 steps. And I think I missed out number 3. Number 1 is to plant the flag.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. So plant a flag. Tell your story. follow the new path. So these paths kind of, as these opportunities kind of come your way, right? You have to start following them, and they're going to pull you away from what you're currently doing, and then teach, and then give it all away.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Jeff, I had a question.
Sure.
First of all, I want to say really great presentation, very inspiring, and I did get your book on Audible, so I'm looking forward to reading that.
Excellent.
Could you share a little bit about your journey in terms of the jealousy? If you faced jealousy, if you faced any blockers or impediments in terms of people undermining your journey and your challenges, especially people that were close to you, and how you dealt with that to not be demotivated, because we know it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Just get yourself together, you've got this, don't listen to anyone, just keep going. At the end of the day, we're born alone and we're die alone, and it's pretty hard to kind of keep going despite all the crap that life throws at you. So how did you deal with that during your journey?
It's interesting, right? So it's a double-edged sword, because look, you saw my kids, right? And my kids are everything to me, my family. And so, you look at your kids and you wake up in that cold sweat when I was 35, and I was like, I got to feed these kids, I got to keep feeding these kids. And so there's that motivation, right? And so, but then there's this stability of the paycheck that you currently have, right? Like I get a paycheck. I'd been through a lot of layoffs, particularly with the .com roller coasters, right? And so, I was always worried about that happening, right? But I was getting a paycheck, and as this stuff was starting to kind of bear fruit, it was pulling me away from that stable paycheck. And at some point, you've got to take the leap. And I've been very fortunate. I've been fortunate for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have a very supportive wife, and every time I was like, look, I'm going to take this entrepreneurial jump. She did this. Okay, right, like kind of thing. But she went for it, and she supported me with that, and I'm very grateful to her for that. And so there was some ups and downs there, and some situations certainly where the runway was getting a little short in those situations. But the other thing, this is really interesting. I kind of let's just say, look, as a straight white male on the internet, I don't face a lot of abuse or challenges. If people disagree with what I have to say, they typically disagree respectfully. I don't really get a lot of sort of hate mail or jealousy or really any kind of abuse. And so there's a lot of privilege there that I'm aware of that has been helpful for me in building this platform. I haven't had to deflect a whole lot of that. Only recently, in fact, only within the last couple of years have I developed, and it's really just been one specific person who I would qualify as a hater. And this person has been aggressively campaigning against me and my work by name. And I don't know why. They've never talked to me directly. They've never contacted me privately. And so I don't really take it seriously. But again, I have the benefit of that. It's trivial in my world, and I can choose to ignore it. So I've been very, very fortunate to have a very supportive family, and have to deal with very little noise. And again, anybody who does challenges respectfully most of the time. And so that's kind of one of the privileges that I have. So
Thank you.
Yep. Kate.
Hi, I thank you very much. This is great. I don't know if this is the proper forum, so I am just jumping into the whole Agile community and the whole Scrum community and all of that. That's my goal, to jump ship careers. I'm not a technical background. I'm not a coder, more of operations, business services, systems, software person. And in the community, there's so much information out there. I am getting very overwhelmed, excited, where there's so much, and I find myself wrapped up and obsessed with, like, I can't look at everything at the same time. And I was just wondering if you have advice of where to focus. Like, do I start with a Scrum or Agile certification? Do I start here? What do I need to start with like the technical back end since I don't do that? Do I need to learn that information first? Do I not need to learn, like, where should I put all my, where should I start putting my eggs in order to move forward faster? And, you know, I don't want to obviously go up, you know, put the horse before the cart, but also take advantage of the opportunity should it arise, which it may be arising sooner than I had thought.
Yeah, so I'll answer super fast because look, I think there are the folks on this call who are way more qualified to answer that than me. And so what my recommendation to you is to reach out to this community sort of after this and ask for advice. And then I think ultimately it's not only just finding the right courses and certifications necessarily, but finding a good mentor, I think, as well, somebody who can help guide. But I would reach out to this group sort of on their, wherever their chat kind of offline forum is, and really they'll give you far better answers than me. I don't feel qualified to answer that.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Cool. Brian.
Hey, Jeff. First and foremost, like everyone had mentioned, you know, thank you so much for hosting this platform. Just a quick question. You mentioned that you had this Zoom call recorded. Where could we obtain that just so we can listen through it again?
Jamie? Jamie knows.
Yep, I am. So yeah, we'll probably within the next 24 hours, you will see that on our YouTube channel. I'm pasting a link again in chat for that now. If you go there, you can subscribe, and then you would get notified when the video is available. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Send a note out to whoever's registered for this event to let them know as well.
Thank you.
And the slide deck, guys, will you be making it available as well?
The slides, if you go to jeffgothelf.com/slides, I will hook you up from there. Put that in the chat as well.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay.
Cool.
So we're gonna let Jeff go. Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming
My
and talking
pleasure.
to all of us, and it's been a pleasure, a wonderful presentation, and to all of you who have come today, thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you around on our Discord server, asking questions, having conversations, chatting with each other, having community. Reach out to me if you're not familiar with Discord, and I'll hook you up.
Excellent. Thank you, folks.
And thank you, everyone.
Pleasure to see everybody.
Hey,
Thank you.
Take care.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you.